There we go, live tonight. Welcome everyone to PLM's Black Forum, the channel for urban philosophy, where we are always straight up, straightforward, and straight to the point. Behind the scenes, we were talking about a number of things which could have been the topic tonight. And one of the things that we were looking at is what organizing our people is going to look like in this day and time. In 2024, what does it look like? And a part of me was thinking this because, as we have small children waking up in the middle of the night, one of the things that came across my mind 2 and 3 in the morning, I said, there's a whole lot of mess that's going around. So if anybody has been following some of those trending topics on social media, on YouTube, I'm sure you have seen a number of different interviews regarding just mess. I mean, Baba mentioned mess that was going on with a Pikesville principal making, racially charged comments regarding students. The famous or infamous Cat Williams interview, which pretty much shut down anything regarding Hollywood and kind of reignited or presented again this whole notion of Black people in the entertainment industry as a model or mode of success comes at a very high price. And one of the things that I thought about when I was looking at kind of this high price is how much a lot of these Black influencers through various streams of entertainment, how a lot of them act like the slave drivers of the past. Now you got to know a little bit about the history of chattel enslavement in America to understand the role that slave drivers played, overseers played. But I was thinking, like, we're at a crucial time in this point in time in history, because we're at a position where a lot of information is being represented, and the people are essentially, they have to make a choice. Which way are you going to go? Are you going to continue to capitulate more into the American culture, which now is being laid out as based in, I'm trying to keep this live very PG tonight, but let's just say is based on you bending over to the whims and the wills of white folks? Or are we going to be organizing ourselves? Come here, baby. Are we going to be organizing ourselves and our family to make sure that our children are going to be good for the future? So with that being an initial topic, and it can go off in many directions, what are some of the thoughts of my comrades? What are y'all thinking? What are y'all feeling about that? Being able to organize our people in this day and time and bringing forth or cultivating the mindset of liberation, cultivating the mindset of separation from this particular society.
Let's get into it, family.
Hotel Mount Harmony.
Hotel.
Good evening tonight.
So, am I able to go, Minister?
Yes, sir.
So, I think organizing looks like race first. I think organizing looks like us focusing on the development and the welfare of us. Even with a lot of these distractions, because this is what they are. When you look at social media, they project these images of distraction to be able to knock us off of real topics and things that are going on that are affecting us, not only personally, but also collectively as a people. When we get back into the interest of Black development, African development, then we're able to stabilize ourselves, not only as individuals, but also as couples, families, a community growing towards a nation, right? As long as we allow them in our conversation, as long as we allow them access into our thinking by allowing them to download, what they think the current trend or topic is, we'll always be swayed towards the growth that they want us to have and where they want us to go. You know, our growth has always been when we always about the best interest of each other, right? Now, the Cat Williams thing and all that stuff, I look at it as it's the truth coming out, right? But the blemish is on the black image. The blemish is the attack is on the black image, right? And I think that what that does is it further facilitates the distrust and the negative narrative, I mean, of black life, right? And it's like we feel as though we can't unify, or we can't come together because we can't trust each other. That becomes the narrative, right? You know, like you look at our community, we have built trust among us. You know, we have families that share amongst each other. Our children interact with each other, and they don't know about distrust. They don't know about confusion. They don't know about, you know, not feeling beautiful or valuable or considered, because every time they look around, their mamas and their babas are pouring into them, they are loving them, supporting them, building them up, encouraging them, things like that. But if we don't create across the board spectrum of that type of narrative and that type of development, we won't have organization. We won't have networking. We won't have community development. We won't have families, you know, that aid each other in the development and advancement, I mean, of our communities going into our nation. So looking at that, that's where my mind is right now. Let's push them out. Let's focus on us. Let's center upon our way, our culture, right? And allow them to be able to live in their ruin, because the mistakes that they make, they put up on us, and we're the ones that are exposed as being the wrong, when the reality is they are the ones that's creating the reality that we live in. And I'll leave it right there.
Real quick, a bibi for Hodie, Ifa Bamila.
Hey,
Race first to Gregory Terrence. Appreciate y'all for coming through tonight.
Brother Sakati.
Yes, peace. That's one of our regulars. It's good seeing you out again tonight. A bibi for Hoodie. Mama Tiombe, you was gonna jump in there? Go on, jump in there, girl.
I think my king said it really eloquently. You know what I mean? I think that he did a really good job. You know, my whole thing, and I say this time and time again when we're on here, is just the importance of the socialization. Because in order for us to properly organize, we have to have a collective effort from everyone, right? I always stress the importance of family, Black man, Black woman, Black children. And that has to be a cohesive unit when we talk about organization. Everybody can't be doing their own thing. Everybody can't be moving in their own individuality, in their own individual path, because we have to have a common goal that we are working towards and a common strategy in order to get there.
Absolutely. And what that looks like when we talk about socialization amongst Black people, with respect to organizing, we got to think about mutual respect. We got to be able to respect each other on a level that we're not cussing each other out, that we're speaking with respect, that we're being mindful of each other. We have to consider what's in the best interest of the group. When we talk about shared concerns, meaning my problems are your problems are my problems. Cooperative economics, we got to be thinking how to exchange Black dollars into Black hands, like for real. When we think about our historical societies, the marketplace was the pivotal point for socialization. That's where everything happens. That's the social climate of who we are as a people. Again, that collective work, communal child rearing. When we think about bringing our children together, how can we organize and not consider our children at the center of what we do? Our children have to be thinking alike so that they can be preparing for the future.
All right, Paul, I got a question.
Let's get it.
Now, I'd like to hear from anybody. I think one of the most difficult conversations that have to be had,
Mm-hmm.
especially in this field of Pan-Africanism, in this field of nationalism. To what extent are we extending ourselves to all Black people? Are we looking to include all Black people in this aspect of mutual respect, group interest, group economics, group child rearing? You know, is it extended out to all Black people? Are we extending this out to the talented 10th of our Black people? What are some of the thoughts regarding that?
So I'll make a quick point. I think you raise a excellent point, and what I will say is you got to have shared ideology. So we got to be thinking the same. We got to share the same mindset, you know. And honestly, our elders and our scholars have told us not everybody going to make it. I'm sorry to say that, but not everybody is going to make it, because when we do not share the same ideology, that's where infiltration happens. That's where certain things that oh, I cannot respect this type of behavior, but this person over here allows it. It could be something as simple as cursing in front of your children, or allowing them to see things that are inappropriate on the television screen, or listening to certain type of music. Once you allow something that shifts and the ideology is not the same, boom, we are now decentered. We're no longer on our square. So ideology for me, what y'all say?
When it comes to that, I think that in general, you know, ideally we would want all Black people to be on the same page. And so the way I see it is like, you know, when you go fishing, you're not saying, look, you know, I only want this kind of fish. You trying to get the biggest fish. And so when you throw your reel out into the water, whatever comes out, you praying that is what you're looking for and what's going to be able to sustain you. And so with our people, it's the same thing. You know, we know all Black people not on the same page, but yes, in general, we are doing this work for all Black people. However, are all Black people willing to agree to the terms? That's the main point. Are all Black people willing to agree to the terms? And so when we start talking about being African-centered, focusing on being race first, putting the Black race first, this becomes the guidelines for being able to filter out what we're not going to take home with us. And so at the end of the day, it requires being serious, you know, being knowledgeable, having the time to do the studies to be able to know what's for us and what's not. And at the same time, it requires a certain amount of finesse and creativity. Because that's the part that I wanted to speak to about as well, because, you know, everybody don't come ready-made. You know, I didn't come into the struggle ready-made. I knew some things. When I came around, I was still confused in a lot of areas. And I'm still working some things out of my system. Because, you know, I only been living like this for like the last 6 years. But I'm 30, 31, matter of fact. So for 25 years of my life, I've been living the opposite, or close to the opposite, or where we supposed to be as a people. And so this requires a lot of creativity. And that was the one thing I wanted to put on the table, because our people, it's not that we don't know what's going on. A lot of us just like, you know, I'm gonna go this way. You know, I see what you're talking about, but you know what? My train is getting ready. Come on, get ready to hop on that train. I want to go this way. So it's like we're kind of all over the place because we don't see the necessity. But I think when we bring in that creativity, we can kind of compete with mainstream, because that's what mainstream white culture is doing. They're enticing our people, persuading our people, seducing our people. You know, they're making it appealing. Not saying that we're not appealing, but it's like that's the competition. How can we make this way captivating, but not compromise what we stand for? And so I believe that's where the creativity comes in. And so, you know, a lot of my points are going to be centered around that tonight, but it's a lot of ways that we could approach that aspect as well.
I like to say something unless Bob say "Goo won't go." You know, always extend my tell my elders.
Go ahead, bro.
Okay. So I like to say, Minister Tommy, that's definitely a good question, right? And the way I want to answer that is personally, right? I conduct myself in the manner, in the way of what an African authentic man should be with all our people, even the ones that I may have to lay at the end of my barrel. Because at the end of the day, right, we have to be in an African centered always. Sometimes we have disagreements and we have issues because our people aren't moving the way they're supposed to be moving. Who are we to lower who we're supposed to be in our interaction because of the way we feel about where people are at? I've reached so many people, right? Not because I was trying to sway them to our way, but because I was genuine in our way, in my interaction with them. And that won them over. Because once they believed that it was in me and they seen it working through me, they could believe that it will work for them, right? They're going to be brothers and sisters, right? That's not going to study as much as we study. There's going to be brothers and sisters, right? That's not going to lock their hair up. That's not going to wear the traditional garb. That's not going to take on the certain rites of passages or spiritual walks. But when it comes to go against our enemy, they're going to be locked and ready. They're going to be there ready, and they're going to be ready to go. I've known this because I've seen this. When I was in the belly of the beast, it was all walks of life that respected me as an African-centered man. Guys that was affiliated with gangs and all kinds of things. But when it came down, because I was a man and they respected me, they stood on that principle right there. You got to realize we are at war. We have no room for picking and choosing who's going to help us or aid us in the development and the advancement of us winning this war. You know, at the end of the day, they are our people, right? Even those that side with our enemy are still our people. But I'm going to deal with them accordingly. But I'm going to deal with them from an African-centered perspective. I'm going to deal with them from a meiotic perspective, right? And just because I'm dealing with somebody from a meiotic perspective, right? Just like Mama Gina said one day, doesn't mean I'm passive. Doesn't mean I'm weak. Spirituality is the strongest thing in existence. It keeps us connected to the divine. And as long as we stay rooted in that, we will always win.
Tashay.
I was going to ask if you had any specific examples of how you use spirituality to manage those relationships, to deal with those interactions. Yeah, that aspect. And I want to also look at some of our organizations that are in existence, juxtaposed to what. Leave it at that. Spirituality.
Okay. Well, simply as this, right? People want to be seen. They want to be recognized. Some of the most dangerous men that I've ever came across that people didn't even want to stand next to had some of the biggest hearts. They were just misunderstood. You know, I remember a guy that was on the tier. He didn't talk to nobody. But every day in the morning when I had my cup of coffee, I would have a conversation with him, even though he didn't talk back, but he would listen. And I would just talk to him about life and different things. And about a couple months passed by, he finally said something. You know what he said? He said, man, you talk too much. So you know what I told him? Well, you start talking. And he opened up and he started talking. And the next thing you know, we talking, we building. And then he pulled me up one day. He was like, man, he said, you my best friend I never had. And the only thing I did was just say, good morning, how you doing? Blah, 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 you know, and had a little small talk with him, right? But it was always on a positive, right? But it wasn't just the talks that I had with him because people pay attention to behavior. He's seen how I walked on the compound. He's seen how I interact with everybody else. That creates the narrative, right? See, your reputation precedes you, right? People will talk about you before other people will see you. You know, so if you walk in a bad light and people hear that when they see you, they already cancel you out. Socialization, right? I mean, is not the environment you're in. socialization, I mean, is the energy, I mean, that you have what? Left on other people that they carry with them everywhere they go. There's traces of me in a lot of people, and there's traces of people in a lot of me. You ever be around people and be like, man, oh, you've been around Bob Imhotep. You've been around Baba Sekou. Oh, you must have been around Mama Gina. You know, you've been around Baba Kulu. You've been around Baba Chipo. You know, you've been around these people, and their energy vibrates through you. And that's how you be able to tap into people. Because people in this world today do not feel heard, do not feel listened to, do not feel that people care about what they're going through. One of the spiritual properties that I live off is this. If you come across my mind, I make a phone call. Because the ancestors is giving me an indication that I need to check on my brother, check on my sister, check on my mama, my baba. I need to check on them.
Yeah, now that's good.
And I listen to that because that is divine interaction. That's the way that the ancestors communicate with us, right? But what we do is we'll feel this vibration and we ignore it because we're distracted by what the Western worldview has done to us. As long as you stay African-centered, right, you will do African-centered things. You will interact with people in African-centered ways. And that was what brings about the development of socialization. If we want our people to be better, we have to be better in our interaction with them, right? Spirituality is nothing but social interaction. That's it. It's being able to take energy and matter and make it coexist and balance.
Ashe. Speaking of thinking about folks, I see Brother Craig Samuels on here. I was thinking about you this week. Glad to see you on here. Hope all is well. A Bibi for Houdier. Shout out to you. Socialization. You on to something, Baba Adisa?
Yeah, Baba Tamim, can you ask your question one more time?
So my initial question was, how does one use spirituality to manage the relationships between essentially the different facets of our people? Baba mentioned, Minister Adisa mentioned once, you know, him being behind the wall with somebody who was considered to be so hardened that nobody else wanted to be around him. You know, we have some of the ratchet friends out there. You know, does anybody have a ratchet friend that's on the live? That's, you know, can share. Does anybody have a ratchet friend that they use spirituality to go out there and to reach, to make a connection to?
Mm-hmm. I think for me, when I think about spirituality in that context, it's reciprocity. It's also what I mean by reciprocity is they get to, I'll take for example some of my friends that I grew up with, you know, some women that I've known for 30 something, 35, 40 years, right? My lifestyle has changed, and how I see my life, I'm living African spirituality. I'm in my doing, in my beingness, right? So I don't separate that like a religious practice. It's just how I am. And one aspect of how I am is to implement reciprocity in the things that I do and the things that I say. And you know, some of my ratchet friends, we using that word. I'm using your word. I wouldn't call them ratchet. You know, I might say a little hood, a little rough around the edges. You know, maybe not necessarily into the culture as I am, but I love them, and I see that in me just showing up in a way that is reciprocal. You know, listening, being judgmental when judgment is needed, being empathetic when empathy is needed. These things slowly have transformed their lives in different ways. So much so they're like, hey, Mama Gina, or they'll say Gina. They're literally saying Gina instead of LaShawn, you know, certain things like that. Or they may ask about a particular herb or how I a parenting technique. They'll begin to question or ask questions or become a part of my world in some way. And I think that is living truth. When you live your truth, when you live ma'at, that's that African spirituality that can connect with, quote unquote, the most ratchetest person. Understanding that that ratchet sister is me as well. We are a mirror of each other. I'm no better or less because I got a little more knowledge than the next person. That's Ubuntu. I have to see myself and my sister. So that's how I see it.
Ashe.
Real quick, because one of the things that stood out to me that you were saying and that my husband was saying is really just highlighting the importance of living it. The importance of that spirit living, even if you have transformed, that the people who are around you can see it in all that you do. You're not on the clock, right? Your spirit isn't cut on from 9 to 5. Your spirit isn't cut on Monday through Friday, and then on the weekends you get to be whatever you want to be, right? So when people are able to see that consistently, because it takes consistency for it to actually be recognized. Because sometimes it's just like, our people, we like to sit and watch a little bit. Like, what they gonna do? What they gonna do when this Boosie come on, right? What they gonna do here 99 2000? What they gonna do?
Listen, I was about to say that too.
but it's really important that as we change, we allow the people that we love and care about to see that change and not necessarily feel like once we get around them, it's time to drift back in that so that they can feel comfortable. Right? Because our transformation is not meant for anyone else to feel comfortable. Our transformation is for our elevation. And even when we think about just cultivating our spirit, especially when we look at the concept of nomo, right, and the development of spirit among other people, among community, right? So when we think about that, what develop, like how do you learn to be spiritual? Some of that is from you seeing. Some of that is from you being around other people. Some of that is from you observing. And so what happens is that every time that we walk in our authentic spiritual selves, we are cultivating the spirituality in those around us. Right? There's a cycle that happens.
Powerful.
What do you think about what we're talking about, Baba Shegu?
No, I was just listening because Mama Tuombe just mentioned something that I was thinking about in dealing with the Nomo and how our spirit plays a major part in liberation, and you can't pursue liberation without spirit. And because when you think about how we have to be in the process of interacting with people, spirit living is basically a righteous way of living. Righteous way of living. You in pursuance of righteousness to maximize your human potential. And when you in pursuit of righteousness, that meaning that you are sending yourself and connecting yourself with the divinity, the divine. So therefore, what Baba talk about in Nomo about spirit unicity, and when you are living consistent with your nature and divinity, meaning every spirit, every energy around you begin to connect to you. It's like you plugged in now. And what that does when you plugged in, it amplifies your spirit. It causes you to ascend to another level. And that's what happens with us when we plugged in. You become more powerful. I remember I had quoted something this morning that we have to realize the power that lies within us. This power that lies within us is truly transcending and transformative. It's a power dynamic, and they have a righteous source in which it extends to. We speak about Odumare, we speak about Ptah, we speak about those Netta or Netta roots as the source of which gave life to us. And we feed on that every day. The moment, that we acknowledge it, the moment that we become obedient to it, the moment that our consciousness recognize it and allow it to illuminate our existence, we make that connection. We do everything with spirit. We do everything in spirit. Sometimes a lot of our spirit energy is more stronger than others because we invest in it. And that's one thing about spirit. You got to invest in it like you invest in your mind. You invest in your career, you have to invest in your spirit. What you put into the spirit world, you get out of the spirit world. If you put nothing into the spirit world, then you get nothing out of the spirit world but sickness, because the spirit can become sick. And when you got a sick spirit, you take that sickness and you leave it over to others. So other people become infected with that sickness, because the spirit is our immune system. And the more that you cultivate the spirit in a healthy capacity, it strengthens you to fight off all these contaminants and impurities that begin to try to invade our space. So the spirit is very powerful. It's very powerful. And it's something that you can't escape. It's inseparable to everything that we do. That's spirituality. Because it's cultivated internally and expressed externally. Hotep.
I say, one of the things that I wanted to share was about Baba Malefe Kite Asante. In this book called Spirit Masters, actually on the back of the book, he defines African spirituality as being the deification of one's nation. And he goes on to say that African spirituality is making sacred the rituals, the traditions, and the ordinary life of everyday people. So it's really just that simple. And this is what my comrades are saying when they talk about spirit living. You hear Baba Sheku just talking about, whatever you put in is what you get out. It's your everyday interactions. It's not something that's so far-fetched, but it's like, if we don't know how to view it from our perspective as Black people, then we're going to miss it. And we're going to think it's a place that we got to, all right, pack your bags. They said we get ready to go to spirituality, hold on, that's the train right there. Get on the airplane. Don't miss the airplane. But it's like, nah, like, look, we're not saying you got to do all that. It's more so a place of, realizing what you got access to, because we are spirits right here. You looking at one. Our ancestors say that your body is just a vehicle. The same way you hop in your car, your body is just that. So what you're looking at is my spirit. And in fact, if you study our knowledge, they teach you that your body looks just like your spirit. So the way you see my face looking, that's how my spirit look. Real deal. So it's like, at the end of the day, it's not something that's so far-fetched, but it's like, how are we going to use it? Once we have knowledge of it, how are we going to use it? What are we going to do? And so that's why it's like we have to always be committed to the things that's keeping us sustained and maintained. This is why we do the software development program. This is why we have the Woo-Woos group. This is why Mama Ngina has the egg bait for the mamas. This is why we have the Race First movement. All these things are funneling and organizing spiritual activity so that we can elevate ourselves. Because when we talk about Black power, that's a spiritual initiative.
Absolutely.
Because it doesn't make sense to do all this healing work just to go outside and continue to see people get assassinated, strung out on drugs, families separated. All that destroys spirit. All that attacks spirit. So when we talk about liberating our people, that's a spiritual mandate. That's a spiritual victory. And so we have to see it like that, because so many people say, like, oh, I'm not in the community. I'm not a community activist. I'm not into that. Like it's a hobby. But we ain't talking about sewing some clothes. We're not talking about knitting a sweater. We're not talking about a hobby. And that's why I always say it's life and death. But we have to be able to see it from that perspective of, spirit living. And so when we talk about understanding these everyday activities and utilizing them properly, we have to also understand that aspect of, okay, as organizers, yeah, we're going to have this main flow of water that's going to sustain the community. But everybody don't know that's water.
Right.
And so this is why I'm saying that the aspect of creativity, because everybody don't know what water look like. Everybody don't know what clean water look like. They be just be like, well, water is water. Some people only got access to tap water, unfortunately. So it's like, okay, in order to get people to the clean water source, we have to find, very creative ways to catch their attention, because, somebody might even know a software development program is open. Therefore, some of the books that we create, that's a fishing line. You know, a lot of my comrades on here got books that just got released. You know, I'm working on music. I also have a construction business, but I'm also working on music to catch people at the back door. Because we have to be able to know that spirit is not limited to just one place. The more you work on your spirit, the more your spirit can expand. And so that's why we have, if you look at Baba Shegu pictures, that's his painting right there.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody don't know that. Somebody may be like, no, that's $1 million picture. Yeah, somebody should pay that much money for it, if they
Right.
got the money. If they got the money. So it's like, at the end of the day, we have to be able to realize that spirit is that powerful. And the aspect of creativity is talking about manifesting what our people need. And so this is why we need the singers, the dancers, the thinkers, the organizers, the people that write books, the people that do spoken word, the people that are actors and do movies. Because this, in addition to the everyday activity, it adds to and it brings more. Because we can't lie, we do need more. I know we ain't gonna have everybody, but we need more. We need bodies to be able to understand what's going on, And to me, to be able to captivate this energy is going to require a multitasking thinking. And so when I speak about creativity, I'm talking about it in that way of, a wheel that's spinning. We got a consistent cycle, but it's also specific reels that's going to people because people respond to different stuff. And so we have to be able to catch people at their interests, and so these creative initiatives is going to help speak to people's spirit depending on where they are at.
I think you make some excellent point. And Bobby, you want to say something?
Go ahead, my dear.
So I love where the conversation is going, because as you were talking, Brother Dakari, I was thinking about how Nomo teaches us about the despirited.
What is Nomo? For those who may not be familiar, I see we got Mama Betsy that came through tonight.
All right.
Good evening, my dear. But let's say you got somebody on the chat who don't know what Nomo. What is Nomo?
Okay, teach us about Nomo.
I asked you.
All right. So Nomo is an African spiritual concept rooted in urban philosophy. And if we broke down the word Nomo itself, is raw power. Some will say that it is the spoken word. It is the beginning of existence. It is the beginning of this book right here. So we're talking about the unified field of African spirituality. Baba Imhotep wrote this book. So when you hear us refer to Nomo
or spirit living,
we're coming from this context, from this framework,
which is a unique PLM framework.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you elevating that point, because a lot of what we're talking about comes from our ideology and how we think. So we are centering Black thought and behavior. And one of the things that will help us in centering Black thought and behavior is to understand when we are centered and when we are not. A lot of times our people use the language of I'm depressed, I got anxiety, I'm struggling, I'm sad, I'm down. We tag on these taglines, but really we're despirited. And in order to ignite our spirits, rejuvenate our spirits, we have to do some of the things that Brother Dakari was talking about. We got to be able to tap into that creativity. We got to be able to inundate ourselves with knowledge. Yeah. That comes from fasting. You might want to turn the regular radio station off, and you might want to look up some podcasts that's talking about some powerful stuff. You might want to look up some lectures and listen to some of our scholars. You may want to watch imagery, that is pleasing to you. You've heard me talk about this for those who are returning, how in many of our homes, we got affirmations on the wall. We got African art. You see the pictures above us. You got to inundate yourself with culture. Yep. You got to inundate yourself with centering Black thought and behavior, because that's what's going to reignite your spirit so that you feel rejuvenated, so that you feel safe, so that you're not paranoid, so that you're not taking on any of these characteristics that do not serve you as an African. So I just wanted to elevate that.
That's a good point. Now we're still talking about urban organizing. So I hope that anyone that has tuned in already, or anyone that will tune in the future, understands that all of these dynamics that are being discussed tonight are some of those fundamental components of organizing. Being in this society where a lot is going on, where a lot of people can get caught up in a lot of different things, one of the fundamental aspects which allow us to reach our people is our ability to live in spirit, to exercise that spirit living. That's the word I was looking for, exercise. To exercise that spirit living, which my comrades have talked so beautifully about. Now, I want to tackle a small niche group in our community. And that particular niche group is the group who believes that they can exercise spirit living in isolation, and who can elevate themselves spiritually while not being involved in a family, in an organization, in a community. And I say this knowing full well that being a part of a family, organization, community, it does not come easy. It does not come without its trials and tribulations, its hardships.
Yeah.
It doesn't come without those times when you may talk to somebody or may look in yourself in the mirror and say, you know what? I think I've had about enough. I think I'm about ready to leave. So to that particular niche group, what do my comrades have to say about that? I'd love to know what your feedback is, what your advice is, and if you had any personal stories like that you are comfortable with sharing, please share.
Yeah, I like to chime in if it's possible, Minister.
Show enough.
Okay. So my family is kind of like that. My biological family is kind of like real distant to themselves, and I know it's trauma based. I know that, socialization, right? When you grow up in a healthy environment around healthy people that love on you, support you, protect you, that don't make you feel inadequate or less than, you know, you grow in a way where as though that you connect to life. You build relationships. You bring out the best in people because you possess the best in yourself, right? But when you come up in an environment where as though that you've been tore down, attacked, you create a defensive response that every time that you feel like you're being vulnerable and put in a space where you can be taken advantage of again, your survival kicks in, and you feel that you have to pull away to protect yourself. It's a defensive response, right? And the problem with that is that the spirit can't grow. It can't grow because it can't connect to the life source. The life source is in everything in existence. This connection, like you take a plant, right? If you take a plant and you uproot it out the ground, what happens to it? It's going to wither. It's going to end up dying.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So our life source is our spiritual pool, right? When we are rooted in that which pays homage and respect to what we are and what we come from, we become energized, we become reinforced, right? And many of our people that live this way, if you ask them, have they had unhealthy relationships? 9 times out of 10, they're going to say yes. If you ask them, have they had trauma in their life? They're going to say yes. And the reason why, that they still struggle with connecting, right, is because they haven't healed through what they've been through, right? But this is what if you go back and you look at our history, a lot of our families were broke up through chattel enslavement. You know, a lot of our families were broke up, you know, in the 50s and 60s, you know, with mass incarceration. You know, a lot of our families were broke up in the 60s and 70s because of the drug epidemic, right? So if you look at these eras, right, all of these eras were designed to create separation, to paralyze that which brings about life, stability, right? First prisons were erected in the 1700s by the Quakers, and the population, I mean, were Europeans. It wasn't us. But guess what happened? Somewhere down the line, I mean, the ball dropped, and now we're over 85, 90% of the population. It's not by coincidence, right? You look at our neighborhoods. You know, our neighborhoods are the ones that are flooded with drugs, guns, and things like that. Where we own no manufacturing companies, we own no gun manufacturing, we don't own none of that, right? I don't know a brother that got an island anywhere, I mean, producing anything. But the reality is that these things make it to our environments to create separation, right? Poverty, right, breeds hurt, pain, distrust, knife in the throat, dysfunction, right? We come from a place where the continent of Africa is what? Plentiful. So our people, I mean, were able to share and interact with each other, right? Europe is a scarce land. Everything's spread it out. They're used to separation. We're not. Until we get back to our nature, right, we're always going to be despiritualized, separated. That's just my thoughts on it.
Ashay, powerful point. I just want to say to add on to what Minister Adisa is saying and connected with your question. It can't work that way, y'all. Those who consider yourselves like, oh, I'm just going to listen from afar. I'm going to support from afar. Support is good. Listening is good, but you must be anchored in a community. If you want to truly work towards African sovereignty, African liberation, you got to be anchored in a community. You're going to have to go through the muck and mire. You know, Frederick Douglass said there can be no progress without struggle. There's going to be aspects of community organizing, being with your people. That's a struggle. It gets real out here because life be lifing. But we're going to life together. And we're going to forge for togetherness. Baba Imhotep says that a lot. And that's one of our battle cries. Let's forge for togetherness. Being alone and being in isolation is not our way. Historically, it's not our way. It don't work that way. We seen and felt that during this global pandemic. We understood how we felt during that time. A lot of people was de-spirited. A lot of people just, life was just different and was hurting and was feeling that pain because we could not socialize or be amongst each other, be in communion with each other. A lot of the struggle that many of our brothers and sisters are facing is because they trying to do it on their own. You got that cape. Hey, sis, I'm giving you permission to take that cape off today and get within a sisterhood, get within a community, because you cannot have a sisterhood without it being connected to a community. Let's be real. I'm speaking to the sisters right now. Mm-hmm. You must be anchored within community. You want to see some true progress? You want to go far? Anchor yourself into an African-centered community. And with that, plant my flag.
Okay. How do you deal with the turmoil of being within the community? Like, it's like, let's say you have a fresh pair of white shoes, kind of white shoes that you always wanted to buy. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you get them white shoes on, you go outside, you on your phone, you texting somebody, say, man, I just got my favorite shoes and step in some mud.
You want to know what this remind me of? In PLM, we took a trip to Ghana and my husband wore some slippery Earls. So he would have used
What a
this shoe.
slippery Earl.
He
I'm
would've
not
used
from your
this shoe.
time period. I don't know what that is.
He would have used this shoe analogy, right? So when you go to Ghana, you know, you go to West Africa, you got red clay mud, right? So to answer your question, I'm gonna bring it back to that moment. You gotta inform each other to respect each other's process. You know, that was that brother, that was Baba's process. His process was, oh, I probably should have asked what type of shoes I'm wearing. You understand? What type of shoes we should wear. And maybe somebody else within the community should have put them on point, like, oh, you know, you gonna want to wear, you know, some closed-toed sandals, you know, because it's gonna be hot, it's gonna be muddy, and the weather is either hot or rainy, because that's West Africa. So to answer your question, yeah, it's gonna be rough, but you gotta be informed and you gotta be vulnerable. You gotta be willing to be corrected. You know, I love to say, accept, correct, and move on. There's gonna be some aspects, as I was talking about earlier, that feels like judgment. That's my eye. Don't let anybody tell you that in our community judgment doesn't exist. You must be judged. If your behavior is not right, it's gonna be critiqued. Is going to call for accountability. You see, if we go into these communities with this mindset, we'll have less impasses. You'll have less arguing back and forth because you'll understand that, oh, my behavior is not in support of this ideology of this community. I must be corrected. I must be informed. I must ask questions. You can't just leave it to happenstance. And you can't be sensitive. All of my sensitive people, you gotta gain some girth with yourselves, some fortitude with yourselves. Backbone. You gotta be able to say, okay, I accept that. I accept this challenge to transform my life, my thinking, my behavior. When somebody call you out on something, you gotta eat that, especially when you know you are in error. So
I think that's something that we just gotta come to accept.
yeah.
Whenever people come together, it's gonna always be challenges and conflict. Not to say that all conflict is severe and toxic, but that's just a part of natural development. You know, that's why in the book No More, it talks about the spiritual implications of struggle.
Yeah.
Because in order for something to develop, it has to be some type of, like, you know, resistance. You know, when we going in the gym, you pumping that iron, yeah, your muscles gonna feel tired, you know, but when you wake up the next day, you're like, dang, these joints kind of swole. But what it take to
Yeah,
get that?
bang yourself in the arm, don't you?
What it take to get that though? What it take to get that? And so at the end of the day, we gotta know that human perfectibility can only be done in the midst of a community. And that's what our ancestors talk about when we speak about ma'at. Like, you don't get ma'at without human interaction, because how you gonna know how good you are at responding to negativity if you've never been tested? And it's hard. It's hard. You can do all this work, you know, study, read, pull libation, work out, do this, do that, do all this community work, and then when somebody cuts you out, how you gonna respond? That right there is challenging. And our people's gonna do that to you, man. Our people's gonna do that to you. You know, I got a lot of situations that, you know, I haven't always been successful at, because I'm still working on my anger. You know, and you know, that's why I got a song about it. The song is called it's not even called, it's called Road Trip. But I'm talking about like a real life story that I went through. You know, I was tested, you know, and I didn't respond the best way, but I learned something. And so that's why it's like the aspect of thinking that you can and become enlightened on the top of a mountain by yourself. Nah, not really. You may feel good when you're there, but what happens when you meet that opposition? And so you know, I do want to just say a little bit of the song, that it's like a small little verse. I ain't gonna say the whole thing, but
Okay, drop
Okay, drop it.
around these spots, no second chances, so I gotta get it. I'm seeing south, don't miss your turn, so I gotta hit it. Banger right the light, then fade off to the darkness way. Know what you think, but it's time to face the unknown circumstance. It don't take much for things to fall, so you gotta see it before they come like psychic powers. Telekinesis. Money got with his cousin at the other scene. Then he talked to his mother. You awesome, and yes indeed. Didn't you know when it happened it would come to this? Yes, you did. I know you seen what to do, but your feelings wouldn't let you win. Not quite you, I'm at my limit. with a lot of things, all because we're fighting just to breathe. When we get to rolling, ain't nobody gonna stop what we got. Don't you ever let the emotions take over. Watch the tension in the room go pop. My daddy always told me you the oldest. Can't be acting like that, you gotta stop. Control the feelings when you in the moment. It's way harder in the struggle when it's hot. Yeah, 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 yeah. So
Hey,
that right
hey,
there,
hey, hey,
that
hey.
that right there is talking about, and that's why I meant it's way harder in the struggle when it's hot. Like everybody think they know what they're gonna do until you in that situation. And you don't know until you've been tested. And so that's why, I think when I first started coming around PLM, Bob was like, you don't got no faith until you've been tested. And that's true. And that's true. And so this aspect of, spiritually developing ourselves and rising to the top, you don't know unless you within human interaction. Because all situations ain't gonna be perfect. Sometimes that person is gonna be completely wrong. And you still gotta respond to that person in a way where you're not disrespecting yourself, but you're not blowing up. I tell my son all the time, your sister is not right for taking your toys and not sharing with you. But if she not listening to you, tell me or your mother. Don't snatch it out of her hand because you don't fight your sister. I know what she's doing is wrong, but you got to show her what's the right thing to do. And so it's not to say you be a pushover. You got to defend yourself. Sometimes you might got to defend your life by fighting, but we don't just jump straight to fighting. And so the thing is, the aspect of human interaction, it helps us to be able to learn, how not to do these things. And so sometimes, you got to get scraped up and bruised up to learn that. But it's no other way besides, going through it. Because the books, it's just to get you in a mentality. But the books is not going to give you the entire experience.
Ashe.
There it is.
There it is.
Ashe. And I appreciate you, my brother, for being able to share a bit of your creativity with us. Because I know that's what was on your mind and heart and your spirit tonight. So just to be able to get out there, drop it on the live, phenomenal. You over here, we bouncing with you.
That's right.
With all of that
We hype.
creativity.
You just gave me some energy. Mama Tiombe, you want to drop some poetry or something? We got 3 minutes.
Nah.
This was good. Tonight was beautiful. I love everything that was put to the floor tonight, talking about organization and African spirituality and being able to see where we are, where we're going, and what we need to get there. So this was very powerful. Baba Segu, you want to take us out? You have any closing words?
Yeah, I wanted to say that when we, the initial topic that was put on the table was dealing with urban organizing. And urban organizing is about group interests. And I think when brothers and sisters retire tonight before they go to sleep, just think about group interests and what is in the best interests and image for Black people. What is in the best interests and image for Black women and Black men, especially women and men that's in complementary relationships, which we speak about in the development of the Black family. So we're not just thinking about trying to save us now, we're also trying to save us in its totality with our people. So we're thinking about 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 30 years from now, 100 years from now. So we got to begin to do the work now to bring us together so we can begin to build ourselves. Because group interest is about power. And you get that through the embracement and the actualization of your culture. Europeans are empowered because of their culture. The Japanese is empowered because of their culture. The Chinese is empowered because of their culture. Every group of people on this planet Earth is empowered because of their culture they practice. We out of power right now because we ain't practicing our culture. We're practicing European culture and any other herb culture and all types of other cultures. So we got to get back to African culture. That's what I want to say.
Hotep. So with the last minute, I just want to give another special shout out and thank you for everyone who tuned in tonight. Anybody who will see this video at any point in time in the future, I want to thank all of my comrades for coming out and dropping and spitting hot fire. I hope that we have given you, the audience, a small tool that could be used for your urban or your, let's say, Black organizing initiatives. And as always, if you enjoyed anything that you have seen tonight, make contact with PLM, because we are also building and organizing. We are extending our family. We are extending our ideology. And if there was anything that was said tonight that resonates with you, be sure to reach out to us. Let us know. And we would love to get the ball rolling for you if you were interested in a PLM process. With that being said, we are at time. It is 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in to the PLM's Black Forum at the School of Urban Philosophy. Where we are always straight up, straightforward,
And
straight to the point.
Hotep.
Hotep.